Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, the WNBA, which largely nobody watches or cares about, is set to destroy itself because it can't simply define what a woman is. We'll get into all of the absurdity coming up. And a good Monday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app. It's real simple. Just search for the Nick Craig Show, tap the subscribe or follow button. You'll take a new program with you each and every weekday morning. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program is always brought to you by the Law Group here in Wilmington. For any legal questions or challenges, 910-251-6088, or visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. We'll hear more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. We are talking about the WNBA today. I've wanted to talk about this over the last couple of weeks. It's just been so barraged with all of the other news across the state of North Carolina that I just frankly have not had a chance to get to it with all the controversy and drama out in NC-11 over the last couple of weeks. Kind of got pushed down on the priority list, but we've got some time today. And we're going to talk about the fact that the WNBA, as it stands right now, and due to the incompetence of Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association, is set to destroy its entire league because it can't do one simple thing: define what a woman is. Now, there's a couple of different recent controversies. Well, one is more recent. The other's been ongoing for quite some time that have put the WNBA, in a miserable position. Now, let's set a couple of ground rules on this and lay out a couple of the details before we get into some of the more recent controversies with Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham. Let's start off with the fact that, in large part, there is not a lot of interest in the WNBA. This is an undisputed fact. Here is a headline that I pulled from the New York Post back in 2024, just to prove this article was written less than 2 years ago, October the 18th, 2024, exclusive at the New York Post. The WNBA will lose $40 million this season, and its NBA investors are growing impatient. Here's just a little bit of the story. While the WNBA is getting sellout crowds for the finals between the New York Liberty and Minnesota Lynx, the league's owners will not be making a return on their investment for the foreseeable future, sources close to the situation said. The NBA owns nearly 60% of the league. When one combines the NBA owners' personal stakes in WNBA teams and the WNBA itself, the amount rises to 75%, a source with direct knowledge of the numbers. The NBA team owners have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the WNBA since its 1996 formation, and as of the 2024 season, the league was set to lose $40 million, which is a bit better than the $50 million forecast and report by several media outlets in the earlier parts of 2024. Now, let me start off and respond by saying this. Professional sports is, at the end of the day, a business. And that's the God's honest truth. Yes, of course, you'd want your team to win. If you are involved in a professional sport, obviously you want your team to be competitive. But when the rubber meets the road, what is a professional sports team, franchise, and league? Whether we're talking about MLB, the regular NBA, NHL, doesn't matter. What is it when the rubber meets the road? It is a business. It is a entity that is set up to generate income for its owners and for the individuals that have a financial stake in said team or said franchise or said league. That's what it is. It is a business. And as we know, as we all took hopefully some sort of basic economic classes at some point in our lives, you can't sustainably operate a business losing $40 to $50 million a year. I think it is fair to say that after a period of time, you would in fact go out of business. Since 1996, when the WNBA was formed, it has been and continues to be heavily subsidized by the NBA, the National Basketball Association, which is a very self-sustaining and very profitable league. A lot of folks are invested in the NBA. The games are sellouts. The TV contracts are massive. The NBA and its teams and its commissioner and Adam Silver, they make a lot of money for everybody involved. It is a very lucrative business operation for those involved in the NBA. It is accurate to say that that is not the same situation and not the same case with the WNBA. It, up until recent years, has not had sellout crowds. Up until recent years, did not draw any sort of audience or viewership on national television. In large part, nobody cared about it. That is a fact. That you can back this up by looking at the league's financials. You can back this up by looking at the league's audiences and its contracts. Now, over the last 2 or 3 years, things have started to change a little bit, and that is in part due to the fact that a very prominent and popular athlete was brought to the league and was drafted into the league in 2024. Her name, which you are likely very familiar with, is Caitlin Clark. She has brought an incredible amount of support, enthusiasm, viewership, and attendance to the WNBA. Case in point, here's a story from NPR, June 11th, 2024. The headline: the WNBA capturing excitement around Caitlin Clark boosts more viewers than ever. June 11th, 2024 is when this article was written. It reads, more than 400,000 people attended WNBA games in the month of May, and more than half of them were sellouts, the league announced Monday, making it the highest attended month for WNBA in well over 2 decades. Viewership, too, is up across all of the league's broadcasts and streaming platforms and among a variety of demographics, including younger viewers, according to the WNBA. The numbers released by the league show that WNBA has been able to capitalize on the extraordinary burst of interest in women's basketball that has emerged in recent years around college basketball, and especially the former University of Iowa star, Caitlin Clark. Clark was drafted first overall by the Indiana Fever in April of 2024. Since then, the Fever, which drew about 81,000 fans in its entire previous season, which is horrific attendance, surpassed that total in its first 5 home games in the 2024 season. So again, laying the groundwork, laying out prior to 2024 and Caitlin Clark coming into the league from the University of Iowa and bringing some level of pop to the league in terms of its viewership and attendance. This was an entity as the WNBA that was not doing well. This was not a sustainable business. This was not a business venture and an entity that made sense on paper. It only has been able to exist since 1996 because the NBA has been funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into its existence. That has all begun the process of changing over the last couple of years, in large part due to Caitlin Clark. That is an undisputed, undeniable fact. Now, of course, there are issues with Caitlin Clark because the WNBA and Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner, is allowing her to be brutalized on the court and not doing anything about it. It's turned in some cases into what I would describe as a racial issue by some of the players in the league as well. It's a complete and total disaster. This has been going on now for 2 full seasons, and it has created a major controversy for the WNBA. And then we hear what has been going on over the last couple of weeks with one of the other popular WNBA players in Sophie Cunningham. And you are truly, I believe we are truly staring down the barrel at a league completely self-destructing because of its own inability to operate a successful sports venture and operate a successful franchise. Because they cannot get out of their own way, because the commissioner is so incompetent at their job, the WNBA as it exists could seemingly disappear in a matter of just years. That's literally what we are looking at right now. Totally avoidable, totally preventable. We are talking about the WNBA and some of its more recent controversies and dramas as we just went through some of the details. This is a league that in large part has been woefully unsuccessful in generating any sort of support, audience, viewership, attendance. It is a league that has only been able to exist in years past because of high subsidization by the NBA itself, who has over the 20-plus year run of the league, actually now 30-year run of the league, 96 is when it started, over that 30 years has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into keeping it afloat. If the NBA at any point over the last 30 years decided to stop writing checks and stop subsidizing the WNBA, it would have completely disappeared. That had changed a little bit in recent years due to some very popular performances in play, most predominantly Caitlin Clark, who is from the University of Iowa, all-time points scorer and leader there. Since joining the WNBA, has shattered or broken nearly every single shooting record. She is an incredible athlete. And because of a variety of different factors, in large part, I believe race being one of them, the WNBA has allowed her to get brutalized on the court. They have consistently not called fouls that have been given to her by other players on other teams. They've created a real mess of that situation. And that's just one piece of this story that has been a slow burn, because this has been a problem since day one with Caitlin Clark. Because she is so popular, because she is drawing so many people to these games, many of the other women in the WNBA are jealous of that. They don't like the fact, which is incredibly stupid, because this is a great analogy for a rising tide raises all ships. That is the case here with the WNBA. With more people watching, with more people in attendance, it helps out the league. It infuses more money into the organization. And of course, with more money becomes higher salaries, and it's a benefit. It's a win-win, or at least should be a win-win for everybody. But because of a variety of different factors, jealousy and I think race being another one of them, the WNBA has decided that they're going to allow their star athlete to constantly be beat up on the court in an incredibly stupid fashion. But again, that's been more of a slower burn and has been a problem now for the last few years. We now transition over into a more recent controversy and a more recent issue involving the WNBA. And it is the age-old question that Democrats have now been struggling with for the better part of a decade or so, defining what a woman is. Yes, I know that sounds incredibly stupid. I can't believe that the words are leaving my mouth here in 2026, but the controversy is back. And the WNBA has been put in a situation where they are going to have to define what a woman is. Why? Because two individuals, former NBA players in Royce White and Enes Kanter, are both announced and have both announced that they are going to be eligible and are going to take part in the 2027 WNBA draft. Important to note that these two individuals, White and Kanter, are both men, both competed in the NBA. And to force the WNBA's hand and make the left truly define what a woman is, they've said, all right, I define myself as a woman. I am pretending to be a woman, and I want to play in the WNBA, which, by the way, will destroy the league. Because as most common sense individuals can clearly wrap their head around, I know it's controversial. I know some might define it as hate speech, but I'm going to say it. There is a biological difference between men and women. I know. It's crazy. It's wild. I can't believe that we're having to talk about it, but it is the God's honest truth. There is a biological difference between men and women. And for whatever reason, those on the political left, and this is largely a political issue at this point, are incapable of wrapping their head around this. I thought that this had already played out. This has been and was consistently an 80-20 issue. We talk about 80-20 issues a lot here on the Nick Craig Show. And there's not many better examples than this discussion over sports eligibility as it relates to gender. The vast majority of the American people very clearly understand that if you were born a man, you play in men's sports. If you were born a woman, you play in women's sports. Unless, of course, there is some sort of co-ed league where men and women are allowed to participate together. You don't just get to wake up one day and decide that you have changed your gender, changed your sex, changed your name, and get to participate in a different sport that is difference in your eligibility based on your biological sex. I pulled a Pew Research study from 2025. This was conducted in February of 2025, so about a year and a half ago. And this was the question. Require trans athletes to compete on teams that match the sex that they were assigned at birth, which again is the common stance. 66% said they favored or strongly favored that, while only 15% opposed or strongly opposed, with 19% not having an opinion, not having a stance on this. 66 to 15. I feel like with these numbers from this Pew Research study conducted about a year and a half ago, pretty clearly paints the picture that the vast majority of people in the United States, about 2/3, in fact, of U.S. adults support policies restricting individuals in the sports in which they play. This is a losing issue. That's why they're called 80-20 issues. 80% of the people, and it's used in this way, 80% of the people are on one side, and you've got a very small portion of people that are on the other side. 80-20, 90-10, 60-40, 70-30 issues. That's why these things exist. And the numbers have consistently, for years, backed up that this, and those that believe that you can just wake up one day, decide that you've changed your gender, decide that you are going to pretend to be a man or pretend to be a woman, does not work. That is not the way that the process plays out. We have seen it in states like here in North Carolina, where legislation has been passed to support female athletes, to protect Title IX, which its whole intention was set up to give female athletes the ability to have a competitive sports league or competitive sports teams to play on and in. That was the whole premise. And because the political left is so insane, because these individuals are so mentally ill in their ideology, they are struggling royally with the definition of what is a woman. I mean, it causes these individuals to short circuit. I mean, they practically self-destruct when this conversation is brought forward. And as of late, one of the WNBA stars in Sophie Cunningham is now receiving backlash from the league in which she plays, from coaches and the commissioner and owners within the league, because she had the audacity to say on an ESPN interview a couple of weeks ago that she wanted to protect women's sports from biological men, for making that outrageous claim, for making that outrageous statement. She is now being dragged through the mud by the political left on an issue that 66% of the American people say makes no sense at all. That's the situation that this league has created. I'll have more detail on that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington. And remind you that if you have any legal questions or challenges, make sure you reach out to Melissa Gott and her team. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have consistently provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. No matter the legal issue that you are facing, whether it's a divorce, a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong legal defense, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, they're located in downtown Wilmington. They're not some big national law firm. Melissa Gott, who joined us on the show last week, her and her team live right here in southeastern North Carolina, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. That's 910-251-6088, or online at lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa and her team's continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. Quick break, more WNBA controversy and just complete and total just incompetence on the other side as the Nick Craig Show continues, streaming live this Monday morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Monday to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Don't forget that you can get access to our daily show notes and more by visiting patreon.com/Nick Craig. I put all the links, all the clips. So we'll have a bunch of clips coming up here in just a minute. All that available, patreon.com/Nick Craig. Also, for those that subscribe over there, you get access to our monthly hangout. That'll be coming up here in the next week or so. Head on over to patreon.com/Nick Craig. Look forward to chatting with everybody coming up here at the end of August. All right, back to the big topic, the big news of the day. The WNBA is set to destroy its entire league because it can't define what a woman is, an issue that the Democrat Party, for whatever reason, has struggled with now for years, is showing up again in the WNBA. It is the WNBA. It is a women's basketball league. league, which I've already highlighted, has been largely unsuccessful in generating any sort of significant revenue. Back just a couple of years ago, it lost $40 million. Nobody watches the games. Nobody goes to the games. It is a business that under any normal condition and circumstances would have ceased to exist probably 30 years ago, almost right after it started, because it's not a good business when you're losing 30, 40, 50 million dollars a year. One of the current WNBA stars in Sophie Cunningham has drawn a whole bunch of flack and hate to her and has been called a bigot and all of the other fun words that the left likes to throw around because she had the audacity during an ESPN interview a couple of weeks ago to say that she wanted to protect women's sports from biological men. She did not think it was appropriate for dudes to play in female sports, an issue that is an 80-20 issue here across the United States. The vast majority of individuals in the United States of America believe it is totally insane, and they are right to believe this, that it is totally insane for men to participate in female sports at the middle school level, the high school level, the college level, and then, of course, as you transition into things like the WNBA. Nobody believes, a very small portion, less than 20% of people believe that that is an insane thing to believe. That's what they think. So this is a losing issue for those on the political left. And because Sophie Cunningham had the audacity to make this commentary, it has put the WNBA in this miserable position. And after we have learned over the last couple of weeks that Royce White and Enes Kanter, both former NBA players, are going to be claiming eligibility and try and get drafted in the 2027 WNBA draft, it has backed the WNBA and their left-wing ideology into a corner where they're now going to be forced to define what a woman is. And we know that the political left can't do that. Here's an interview that took place, or a back and forth that took place a couple of weeks ago with Sophie Cunningham when she was pressed again by a reporter over her insane statements that we should protect women's sports. Take a listen to this.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense. And I think I'll always believe in that. I think it's really important to protect children. And that's little girls who are also involved in that category. And so I stand on what I said, and I always believe that.
Yeah. Do you see your advocacy on that, like, taking any form going forward?
You know, I don't know. I'm not a very political person, but I do have beliefs. I have morals, and I'll always stand on those and be true to who I am. And I think people are going to take it how they want to take it, but I've never even really said anything about that. And so when it comes just to protecting young girls in sport and women in sport, I feel very strongly about that. I think that's why you have Title IX. That's why you have some of the greats in women's sports. If Title IX and women's sports weren't protected, then you wouldn't hear about any type of women in sport. And so I think in the future, it's just really important to protect.
Do you think, I guess, along the line like that, it goes against perhaps some people might say, hey, for the trans community, this could be something that could come back on us or be targeted against us. Like, how do you, I guess, view that sort of critique?
You know, like I said, I extend love, and I don't dislike anyone. Like, I think there is room for absolutely everyone here, and I think there's room to love everyone. And I truly think when you get people in the same room and you have conversations, you actually have a lot in common with a lot of people. And so I'm there to love, but I'm also there to love biological women, and I think that there are rights that need to be protected. And like I said, I'm going to stand true to that. I'll never falter in my beliefs in that, but I have never once said I hated the trans community. Like I said, I think there's space for everyone.
I mean, what a ridiculous exchange. Not digging Sophie Cunningham there at all, but the fact that we are once again having this conversation is ridiculous. We just saw a major United States Supreme Court case, 2 months ago, dealing with this exact issue, giving states the ability, a major win for protecting female sports. And Sophie Cunningham said the quiet part out loud. Without Title IX, there would not be female sports. Title IX was enacted, back in sometime early 1970s, something like that. Without Title IX, female sports, women's sports would not exist. And for whatever reason, the same people that fought for Title IX are now fighting for Title IX to essentially be thrown away. That's what happens when you allow biological men to participate in female sports. I'll say it once again. I'll allow myself to spew hate speech according to the political left. There is a biological difference between men and women. We see this in every aspect of sports, that we see it. There's a biological difference. And for whatever reason, that has become the major controversy. That has become the major issue. And since this situation has played out in the WNBA over the last couple of weeks, look at this story. This is from June the 30th. Reading from Yahoo Sports. Seattle Storm co-owner Celeste Keaton has been suspended from the team's next 5 home games, according to the WNBA, following an exchange with 2 fans Tuesday night back in late July. Reports say that during the Storm's game against the Indiana Fever, of which Sophie Cunningham and Caitlin Clark both play, Keaton made an aggressive statement towards 2 young girls sitting courtside wearing merch and carrying signs in support of Sophie Cunningham. The Indiana Fever guard made news off the court by speaking out against transgender athletes in sports. Photos from Tuesday night show 2 teenage girls sitting courtside wearing XX and XY t-shirts symbolizing sex chromosomes and carrying signs thanking Cunningham for her support of girls' sports. In a post on X, one of the girls said that when Keaton first approached them, she thought she was going to be nice, but then Keaton started yelling at them, telling them that they were, quote, effing insane for showing up to a WNBA game. Now, by the way, this is a customer, right? We talk about business. This is a customer. You have 2 young women that purchased tickets to go to a WNBA game, and one of the co-owners of the Seattle Storm, which nobody knows or cares about because it's the WNBA, decided to harass 2 paying customers of her team. This is how insane the political left is. This is how mentally ill the political left is currently. You have 2 paying customers that show up to your sporting event, show up and are spending dollars with your team. They are literally customers of your business, and you are verbally harassing them because they are wearing shirts that say XX and XY, which are, of course, sex chromosomes. That is how this conversation and how this debate has evolved over the last couple of years, where making the statement, which of course is based in reality and of course based in science, right? We've heard for years during COVID-19 about trusting the science this, trusting the science that. Well, let's trust the science a little bit here. The science says very clearly that there is a genetic difference between men and women. I don't think that that is undisputed science. I guess maybe it is in some corners of our current political sector, but that's the science. And for making the claim and for wearing a t-shirt that shows the 2 different chromosomes laid out for those statements, for those comments, 2 young women who were giving money to the Seattle Storm and patronizing a game were verbally harassed by one of the co-owners of the team. The left is totally mentally ill. That's the long and the short of this story. They are so freaking out of control with their ideology that they are staring down the barrel at destroying the entirety of the WNBA because of their political ideology. And it's really sad, and it's pretty miserable, to be perfectly honest with you. Wrapping up our conversation here on the WNBA, a looming disaster for them in large part due to 2 former NBA players, 2 men by the name of Royce White and Enes Kanter, have claimed eligibility for the 2027 WNBA draft. They have both claimed to be transgender and have announced their plans over the last couple of weeks to participate in the 2027 WNBA draft. It has created a major controversy for the WNBA. Royce White, who recently lost a Republican primary for a U.S. Senate seat in Minnesota, has claimed to be transgender and argued that he should be allowed to play in the WNBA, according to a sit-down interview with Fox News. White presented himself as a legitimate WNBA prospect, claiming that he is, quote, sometimes identifying as a woman for the purpose of basketball and professional basketball, and announced his intentions to enter the 2027 draft next April. He said and told Fox News, quote, I think I'd be unstoppable, but I'm a team-first guy. I'm a pass-first kind of player. I do the little things. I led my team in all 5 major stat categories at Iowa State University, so I do a little bit of everything. I'll do whatever the coach needs me to do. I'll do whatever the girls need me to do. I think it's only fair. White went on and also said that the WNBA could end his challenge by issuing a definitive statement that people assigned male at birth are prohibited from playing in the league and in women's sports overall. Asked whether he would still proceed if the league did not issue such a statement, White stated, oh no, I'm declaring, and I don't want to be discriminated against. I want fair treatment. I love that this is playing out the way that it is. The only way to continue this discussion, the only way to prove how insane this situation is, to prove how incompetent the ownership and the leadership of the WNBA is, and that in large part includes Kathy Engelbert, who is the commissioner, totally incompetent, a total moron at her job, is to do this. This is how you point out the absurdity. This is how you make your point. There is nobody in their right mind, and of course, this is why it's created such an issue. There is nobody in their right mind that wants a former NBA player participating in the WNBA. The WNBA sure as hell doesn't want that because, of course, they know inherently that there's what? A biological difference between men and women. And so now their backs have been pushed against the wall. There was a meeting that took place last week where the WNBA was set to deal with this issue. They have not come out with any sort of final ruling or final issue on this decision, but they're going to have to come up with this pretty quickly here. The draft for the WNBA is in April of next year, and they need to set the eligibility moving forward. Let's move on to the next player, former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom. On August the 10th, posted a video on X showing him signing a document asking the WNBA to accept, quote, his decision to enter the player pool for the 2027 WNBA draft. In the video, Kanter wore a shirt reading, invest in women, pay women, hire women. The slogan was popularized by women's sports advocates over the last couple of years. In an August the 7th social media post, Kanter had said he had reviewed the WNBA's eligibility guidelines and its approach to self-identification and inclusion and determined that he met those criterias. He claimed he was not here to mock, make fun of, or disrespect any community or personal choices, saying in a statement, quote, I am simply asking the current rules to be applied equally to everyone. The rules that represent the very values many WNBA players and coaches have publicly advocated for. My team and I are prepared to ensure that these guidelines are applied equally, consistently, and without exception, and I look forward to the WNBA honoring its stated principles. Portions of the WNBA's collective bargaining agreement, or its CBA, which essentially lays out the process for how the league operates, states that, quote, only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. However, the CBA agreement neither defines the term woman nor establishes any eligibility policy for transgender or intersex players. It does also not state that self-identification as a woman is sufficient to establish eligibility. Just before Freedom and White made their announcements, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert sent teams a memo about ongoing discussions concerning transgender athletes in women's basketball. Engelbert said a task force of team presidents and general managers would discuss the issue at a meeting that took place last week. And in fact, the meeting took place, and obviously there was enough controversy. Obviously, there was too much dissent in the room for them to move forward with an actual policy and an actual CBA, which, by the way, would have to be agreed to by the players' union, to move forward with making sure that the sporting league itself is protected. So with this, here is a video and some of the ESPN commentary of the Lynx head coach, one of the other WNBA teams, who wore a shirt at a game in the last couple of weeks that says very bluntly and very clearly, trans kids belong. And this is how ESPN and the woke ideology over there gushed over the coach wearing this shirt.
Well, we see Cheryl Reeve wearing a shirt today in support of trans kids. Trans kids belong on the shirt. This in the aftermath of Sophie Cunningham's recent comments. We actually saw Cheryl and Sophie speaking at center court pregame. And yesterday, Cheryl Reeve spent a lot of time talking at length with the media about this topic.
I would encourage anyone to go and listen to Cheryl Reeve's comments. Incredibly thoughtful. Easy to find online, and just encourage anyone to go and listen.
Well, you don't. I did that so you didn't have to. And the comments were incredibly stupid. The comments were incredibly moronic, because that's what this whole conversation is. You know, I'm beyond the point of trying to talk about this in a way that is attempting to be logical, because you're dealing with an illogical situation. Nobody in their right mind truly believes that this stuff should be playing out the way that it is. And I'm not going to give it the kind of credit that it deserves to have a legitimate argument and discussion over. It's not. It's moronic. It is insane. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. There is a difference between men and women. We have known this now for centuries. This is not new. This is not breaking information that I'm bringing to you here on this program. This is well-defined science, which the left claims to care about so much. The big science people, right? A great Dr. Anthony Fauci and all of his cohorts that destroyed the United States of America and the rest of the world for years in the name of science. It's these same fools, these same morons that are now having this intellectual or attempted intellectual debate over how we deal with this stuff. There's no debate that needs to be had. If you're a man, you play in men's sports. If you're a woman, you play in female sports. That's the long and the short of the discussion. I look forward to these two men, these two former NBA players getting drafted in the WNBA. And if they are discriminated against, I hope they sue the league and win and see the WNBA's demise. Not because I want the WNBA to go away, but because this is how things need to play out. This is the only way to force these people on the political left, which is seemingly the entire leadership of the WNBA and all of its idiotic coaches and people that are behind the scenes. It's the only way to force them on this issue. That's the only way to do it, is to point out the absurdity, allow two men to come into the league, dominate the women that play in the WNBA, and you will watch the league collapse, which, by the way, it should have collapsed 25 years ago because nobody cares about it, nobody watches it, and nobody supports it. We're going to keep a close eye on this. I can't wait to see how the WNBA actually comes out and see if they have to make the claim that transgender women are not actually women. It will be a fascinating thing to watch. We'll keep you up to date with the details right here on the Nick Craig Show. It's ludicrous that we're even having this discussion. I thought this was settled. I thought over the last couple of years that this issue over alleged trans athletes had been dealt with. But no, save it to the WNBA, save it to the strong women in the room at the WNBA to completely botch this situation and destroy their own league. Save it for them to do. What a bunch of clowns. What a bunch of fools. What a bunch of morons. So simple. If you're a man, you're not eligible for the WNBA. I don't care if you wake up and put a dress on or change your pronouns on your LinkedIn to she, her, whatever the hell you need to do. That doesn't make you a woman. Everybody knows this. Everybody understands this. But boy, they have backed themselves into a corner and created quite a quagmire for themselves. I look forward to it. I think it's absolutely freaking hilarious, and can't wait to see. I personally hope that both White and Cantor both end up getting drafted into the WNBA coming up in April. And if not, I hope they sue the living shit out of the league and completely destroy it, because that's what needs to happen. These are not competent, sane people running this organization. So we'll keep an eye on the details and bring them to you right here. All right, that's going to do it for a Monday edition of the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to the Law Group here in Wilmington for their continued support. LawGroupNC.com is their website. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, is available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app, and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Monday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.